Welcome to Comic Power. I am your host, Comic Killer 72. Welcome to Wicked Wednesday, where we discuss all the new comics that's coming out this week. Every Wednesday is like Christmas for us nerds because that's when the new comics come out. These are my recommendations for the best books to pick up on Wednesday. But here's some other information first. In the United States, Guardians of the Galaxy drops on May the 5th, and man, I can't wait. I've been waiting to see this for a very long time. I stopped watching the trailers after the second one because I didn't want them to give too much away. For those of you in other countries that have seen it before us, don't spoil it. In saying that, as always, be sure to subscribe to this channel and share it on social media. I'm just crossing 700 subscribers, but seriously, it should be more than that for what this channel does. Comic Power shouldn't be a secret anymore. In saying that, let's go ahead and get into New Comic Day, starting with DC Comics, and they're giving us Batman number 22, and this is part 3 of the Button story arc that ties the Watchmen universe to the new Rebirth DC universe. Batman and several other DC Rebirth books drop twice a month. That's why it seems like I'm talking about Batman every week. Next up is Deathstroke number 18, and in my opinion, he's the greatest anti-hero mercenary ever created, first appearing in the New Teen Titans number 2 back in 1980. He's the prototypical merc for money that Marvel stole from for Deadpool 11 years later. Deadpool fans don't like to hear that, but it's pretty obvious when you put them beside each other. DC should have sued him. Next up is Cyborg number 12, and this is better than people give it credit for. This is part 3 of the Danger in Detroit storyline. Cyborg will be appearing in the Justice League live action movie later this year, so he'll get more love as we get closer to that. Next up is Superman number 22, and this is part 1 of the Black Dawn storyline. Peter J. Tomasi is writing both Superman and the Super Son title, so there's tight continuity on this. Superman is such a powerful character that it's hard to make him relatable, but Tomasi does an excellent job doing exactly that. Great job, Pete. Next up is Absolute Preacher on hardcover volume 2. This collects issues 27 through 40 of Preacher. The series made its debut in 1995 as a critically acclaimed series on Vertigo, a division of DC Comics. After years of development, it found its way onto television with a show currently running on AMC. It's one of those science fiction non-superhero books that influence publishers like Image Comics to give up on superheroes and just do science fiction and horror. Next up is the Speculation Pick of the Week. And that's going to be BANE Conquest number 1. This is the first part of a 12-issue miniseries starring Batman's most menacing foe other than the Joker. Like with Spider-Man and Venom, his live-action appearance wasn't as good as fans would have liked, but people still loved his character, and he's famous for breaking Batman's back. His first appearance is in Batman, The Vengeance of Bane number 1 back in 1993 with one of the most awesome covers ever. BANE Conquest is reuniting Chuck Dixon and Graham Noel, who both created Bane in the first place. So who better to tell a Bane story other than who created Bane in the first place? So get you some of this. Next up, let's see what Marvel is up to, and that's going to be Guardians of the Galaxy number 1. They timed this reboot to drop this 2 days before the movie comes out, and that's good marketing. And of course that means variants, including this hip-hop variant, which is inspired by Goody Mob's 1998 Still Standing album shown here. If you don't remember Goody Mob, it's the group that CeeLo Green got his start in. Yeah, I know he's annoying, but that song Crazy is one of the best things I ever heard in my life. Next up is Black Bolt number 1. This is a Inhuman spinoff because Black Bolt is the king of the Inhumans. He has a huge power set, but he's best known for his voice. If he talks out loud, he could level a city. If he screams, he could destroy a whole planet. That power has varied depending on who's writing the character at the time. But either way, he doesn't talk because things could go bad if he does. Marvel is absolutely hell-bent on making the Inhumans important. I still don't think it's going to work. I think they're supporting characters and not leads. Next up is Hawkeye number 6. This is the Kate Bishop version of Hawkeye, and it's just a lot of fun to read. She sets up a detective agency in the Los Angeles area. She's a very relatable character and has a good sense of humor about the book. It's a much lighter read. A perfect read for a teen girl that's just getting into comics. Next up is Jean Grey number 1, aka Marvel Girl, aka the Phoenix. And this character is probably the most popular female X-Men character ever created. She should have had her own series a long time ago. Of course, Marvel can't help themselves, so you're going to get a trillion variants. The Jason Scott Campbell variant of this is selling for about $35 right now. There's a 3-book variant set that's selling for about $100. Next up is X-Men Gold number 3. This is the team where Kitty Pryde is now in charge. With art by Adrian Saif, the same guy they had to fire for putting subliminal messages in issue number 1. I'm sure Marvel combed over this pretty good to make sure they didn't have anything else crazy in there. They don't have time for replacement art, so they had to put this out but make sure it was cleansed. Next up is Jessica Jones number 8. Even if you don't like the character or follow the story, you should be buying these because of these David Mack watercolor covers. They're simply gorgeous. Next up is Spider-Man number 16. This is the Miles Morales version. They relax the storyline here and back away from the Spider-Verse and all that crazy universe jumping and make him a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man again. And here he takes on the Black Cat. Based on their last encounter, he's got a bone to pick with her, don't you think? Next up is Secret Empire #1. A number 0 came out a couple of weeks ago, which was a setup. And this is issue #1 of a 9-part maxi series, which is written by Nick Spencer, who's currently writing The Fix over at Image. He can write events, but underneath it all, he has a quirky sense of humor that makes it all work. Let's face it, nothing really happens in Marvel events, because when it's all over, they always reset everything back to status quo anyway. Next up is our report on independent comics and small publishers. First up is a strong release from Aftershock Comics called Pestilence #1. It takes place in the 14th century in the Middle Ages, where the Black Death plague is ravaging Europe. This is a reimagining of those events in which, instead of disease killing people, it was actually zombies. The premise is interesting and these covers look fantastic. This is my runner-up pick of the week. At the making of this video, all covers are selling for a premium already on eBay. The question is, will it last or is it just a flash in the pan? We'll see. Next up is Riverdale #1 from Archie Comics. This is a tie-in to the hit television show on the CW. They're dragging the character out of the 1950s and putting him in the present day for a change. Next up is Hero Killers #1 from Dynamite Comics. And this is a spoof of the superhero genre in which 3 sidekicks try to upstage their bosses. If you're a reader of Hinch Girl or The Tick, you'll probably love this. Next up is Sword Quest #0 from Dynamite Entertainment in collaboration with Atari. This is a 25-cent introductory issue to get people to try it out. Hey, just a quarter, you can't say no to that. Next up is Image Comics, and they're bringing more heat than the 4th of July in the Sahara Desert. Yeah, that's pretty hot. First up is the return of Youngblood with Youngblood #1. Here's a little bit of Image history. When they were first introduced in 1992 as a creator-owned publisher and founded by these guys. All former Marvel artists that wanted more control over their work. Youngblood was actually the first release from Image Comics in early 1992. Created, drawn, and written very poorly, by the way, by Rob Liefeld. Hey, he's a legend for being the co-creator of Cable and Deadpool and Domino, but he's clearly one of the most divisive and controversial figures in comic history, which would have to be discussed in another video. And by the way, Rob is not drawing or writing this title, so it might actually be good. Next up is The Walking Dead 167. Robert Kirkman does not phone it in. It's just as good as ever. It should be a no-brainer pickup every month that it comes out. Here's some more Image history for you. Robert Kirkman is the only non-founder to be a Image partner. That's how important he is to the company. Without The Walking Dead #1, there might not be an Image Comics around anymore. They almost completely drop superheroes, and about 95% of what they publish is going to be science fiction, horror, etc. And they do it extremely well. Next up is Extremity #3. The lead character is a female artist who gets her hand chopped off in a war. She wears a prosthetic hand, takes up arms with her tribe, and goes back to war for revenge. Issue #1 is also coming out this week in a 3rd print. It's a battle between man, monsters, and machines. I highly recommend this title. Next up is The Old Guard #1, and this is a 3rd print variant that's being released. It's the story of immortal mercenaries. Issue #2 is also being re-released in a 2nd print variant, which looks like this. Shown here is issue #1 first print, and I named it the Spec Pick of the Week back in February 22nd. Next up is The Eternal Empire #1. This is a debut series where a woman must decide if she's going to fight in an upcoming war or run from it. I imagine she's going to fight, because if she just fled, it would be a pretty boring series, don't you think? Next up, Image is doing several reprints called Image First, where they're selling some reprints of issue #1 for just $1. It's a good cheap way to check out some titles you might have missed, such as Black Magic #1, Headlopper #1, Kill Be Killed #1, Renato Jones #1, Seven to Eternity #1, The Fix #1, and many others, but I'll leave it at that. Up next, over at Valiant Comics, they're giving us Bloodshot #0, which is going to a 2nd print. This is the first mention of Bloodshot's daughter and the first appearance of Project Omen. I named this book the Speculation Pick of the Week for March 22nd. So the 2nd print gives you an opportunity to catch up on what's going on. The next phase of Bloodshot, called Bloodshot Salvation, is coming up, and that's going to be a blast. Next up is Divinity 3, The Stalinverse, going to trade paperback. This trade collects all 4 issues of this critically acclaimed miniseries about an alternative reality where the Soviet Union has won the Cold War and rules the world. And the valiant heroes that you know, like Exo Man of War, Shadow Man, and Bloodshot, are enforcers for the Soviet Empire. This is beyond comic books. This is top flight science fiction. And Matt Kent is probably still underrated as a writer. Next up, and from 451 Media Group, is Stained #1, and this looks impressive. It's the story of Emma London, who's part woman and part machine, and she's a recovery specialist and bounty hunter. Now remember, the Hollywood producer and director Michael Bay owns a piece of 451 Media, so you might want to pay attention to their books, because it may be a playground for future development for TV and movies. That's strictly speculation at this point, but their product always looks good. Let's show some love to Lion Forge Comics, a new publisher with some very ambitious releases. The first one is Catalyst Prime Noble #1. This is the story of a missing astronaut that returns with some dangerous new abilities, but he has no memory of who he once was. It kind of reminds me of Divinity, being that it's a black astronaut that's coming back with powers, but this character has amnesia when Divinity did not. It's definitely worth a look. Next up from Lion Forge is Ab Orato #1. It's the story of a dystopian future where the rich have access to a vaccine that allows them to live hundreds of years. The protagonist shown here arrives in Montreal and joins a group of insurgents who are fighting against the corporate powers and the city that controls the vaccine. Of the two books they're releasing this week, this is the one that I like best. I don't know why they're releasing both books at the same time anyway. They should release them 1 week apart. But hey, it's done now. Next up, and from Oni Press, is The Dam #1. It's a mashup of horror, monsters, and the Prohibition era. It's written by Colin Bunn, who's the master of horror, and they're selling it for just $1 to get you to try it out. And then there's Tekken #1 from Titan Comics. This is based on the iconic fighting game franchise, and this is #1 of a 4-part miniseries. As we close, be sure to subscribe and share these videos on social media so others can learn about the channel. That's about it for today. Thank you for watching Wicked Wednesday, where I review all the new comic books for a new comic day. Be sure to follow my blog at comicpower.net. On social media, follow me at facebook.com/comicpower.net and comicpower-universe.tumblr.com. And don't forget twitter.com/comicpowersub. I also sell comics on eBay at this link. This is Comic Killer 72 for Comic Power saying bye-bye. And don't forget to share this video, click on subscribe, give it a thumbs up, and tell everyone you know about this channel to help it grow. Thank you for your support.